Welcome back, everyone. We're back here with another product deep dive. This time I'm joined by Tom from Alation.
Thank you.
And looking forward to this presentation. Please tell us about yourself and
Awesome.
get off.
Yeah, great, thanks. So first of all, it's great to be back. I was here last year, and it's a much bigger event this year, so that's awesome. So I run our solutions engineering team for EMEA. I've been with the company since we were 2 people in the region. We've now grown to sort of 70, 80 people, which has been a brilliant journey over the course of 5 years. Yeah, so here to talk about what we're all about at the show this year, which is driving a data culture and managing cloud complexity. So
before you hit it off, I want to ask you, you said, there's more people here. Has anything changed since November of last year when you know what happened and everybody sort of understood what AI and data and digitalization can do? Has the tone of conversations changed?
I think it has, right? There's a lot of people that want to leverage that. They want to be able to use that to augment what they're already doing around data management, data best practices to come to a better decision. There's a sort of renewed focus on driving data culture within organizations, and so we're seeing that as being a real driver for the need for data intelligence software.
And data literacy, so there's a sort of a revival in people's minds now.
Absolutely, right? We're seeing a lot of forces in the market around changing workforce, explosion of tools, the usage of AI and ML within people's data landscapes. And what that actually does is it makes it harder for people to really leverage the data assets that they're keeping, because where does it exist? How do I use it within the compliance of local regulations? What does it even mean? How do I understand? How do I interpret the stuff that I'm seeing?
I think this is going to have effects aside from the missed opportunity. We're talking about shadow IT. We're talking about a lot of people being educated and using things in a non-compliant way. We saw the Samsung thing happen quite recently. And so stuff is happening, whether we like it or not. And not only is it happening, but it's going to happen faster. What we thought was going to be 2 years away is now going to be 6 months away, and so on. So
yeah.
Why don't you hit it off?
Well, it's interesting. Before we do, it's interesting you mentioned shadow IT, right? Now, when it comes to actually sort of using and utilizing data to make better decisions, data governance actually plays a really important part of that. How should I use this and still be compliant? Does it contain personal information? Can I use it for the use case that I want? And the sort of traditional way of doing that is a bunch of spreadsheets. And the problem with that is, as soon as you copy that spreadsheet and send it to one of your colleagues, it's already out of date, and it's difficult to actually engage with. So what we're seeing is not just shadow IT, but also shadow governance. People are actually circumventing organizational processes because they're hard to actually engage with, they're hard to get things done, they're slow to react, and they're coming up with their own way of doing data governance, which actually causes a lot of issues with, potentially can cause a lot of issues with the usage of data. And things like the Samsung thing you mentioned, it can also be a product of poor governance.
Right.
Anyway, so there we go.
I'm looking forward to seeing some examples, and I hope you don't mind if I ask some questions while you're showing.
Absolutely not. Okay, cool. So let's dig into it then, right? So we kind of start from the premise that the most successful organizations are data-driven. So we do our own research. We do this every year, and we see that 9 of 10 companies are saying that if they are driving a top-tier data culture within their organizations, then they are expected to meet or exceed their revenue goals. There are other bits of research that have been done. So this one is from Ivanta, and it looks at the top priorities of CDOs. And you can see that actually things haven't really changed since 2021 to 2022, the last time this was done. The big difference is that data governance and data-driven culture have switched positions, but that with a kind of renewed sort of focus on risk, I think that's kind of understandable. But the two things are actually really closely linked, and we'll kind of dig into that.
Let me ask you, they are closely linked, but can you clarify in what way they're distinct? Is one more of a data as an IT component, and then the other one is more of a a business process type thing? Is that the distinction?
Well, I think it's everything, right? To be data-driven, it means engaging people up and down the organization to really have discussions around data, how to use it, how to interpret it, what the best outcomes are as a result of patterns that you're seeing inside the data. Now, typically, that's been left to people that work with data all the time, and you get bias, you get the opinion of the most, most well-paid person in the room, and you don't get the engagement from other people that haven't traditionally worked with data. Now, in order to put data in front of more business-focused users, data governance is actually critical because you need to be able to convey, well, you can use this, but it needs to be in compliance with this policy that we have around PII, this policy around data sharing and data access. And that's the sort of the reason why those two things are very, very closely linked.
Okay.
Now, the issue is that becoming data-driven is actually really, really difficult to do. So Gartner have done some research, and you can see there that less than half of organizations have their data optimized for usage, and only 35% of the people that they surveyed have successfully used data and analytics as a differentiator. And then you've got New Vantage partners on the right who are saying that only around about a quarter of organizations are actually data-driven in the way that they behave. And the reasons for this, we think it's threefold, right? There's an explosion in the amount of data, and we'll talk about that in a moment. There are changing workforces, so the bringing into the fold of different types of users, working from home, et cetera, et cetera. And then there are evolving laws depending on which geography you're actually in and what market you're in, what industry you're in. So it's hard to find the data, hard to use it, and hard to comply with those regulations. So it's tempting to think that actually cloud's going to fix this for us, right? Thinking about that data explosion, it's easier to find that information in the cloud than it is in some legacy data source sat in some dark data center somewhere, right? But cloud actually sets a fire to the existing issues and actually creates new ones as well. So from a data perspective, you have all of these different services that can operate in isolation. They create their own data in different silos. From a user perspective, all it takes to sign up for some of this stuff is the swipe of a credit card. The average organization uses over 100 different SaaS products, and the mapping of users to applications is many to many, right? It would make a traditional foreign key cry. And more cloud means more region where different laws, different overlapping regulations may actually be applicable. So we're in the midst of this cloud complexity crisis, and ultimately this leads to unpredictability in the outcome of data science, data analytics, and the consequences of that can be severe, right? People act on the data that's in front of them. Decisions aren't made collaboratively. They're made in isolation, et cetera, right? So at best case, organizations are making suboptimal decisions based on the data that they are keeping and maintaining. And worst case, like their ability to actually succeed is destroyed by this complexity that we're seeing.
Does this relate in any way to decentralized data, sort of working with data in a decentralized way?
You have read my mind, right? Because, hey, here we go.
There we go.
Right, so what you're probably thinking is, hey, we've solved this, right? From big data, Hadoop, who championed centralization 10 years ago, to data mesh today, which talks about the exact opposite, right? It's decentralization, it's the creation of data products. But the thing is, there will always be some other framework, right? There will always be some other architecture that's going to come to the forefront. The hype curve is absolutely littered with technologies. Some of those will peak in 10 years, some of them will peak in 2 years, and some of them are going to become obsolete before they even get to peak.
Well, let me ask if I understand what you're saying, because I think it's always cool to have a hot take, and ultimately, I don't really think there is such a thing as the truth when it comes to this kind of stuff, or anything, really. But even so, are you saying something like these concepts of decentralizations are just tech hypes and there's going to be another one, or they're not sort of eternal and true?
Not necessarily. Like, one is an evolution of the next, right? There are some really good stuff that comes from the evolution of centralized architectures to our current decentralized sort of way of thinking, right? It is time to deployment, it's reactiveness, it's being able to have the data in the tool that makes sense for that particular set of users, but it comes with the complexity of, I may not even have visibility that we have that tool, let alone the data assets that exist within it.
Okay.
Right.
So you're saying that there might be a framework that comes that improves on what we have today.
Potentially.
Hard to see how that's possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. We've got it right.
I understand then. Good.
Yeah. So getting back to the ultimate goal, right, which is driving a data culture, driving data-driven decisions, we've got to take everything that we just spoke about and flip it on its head, right? So from a user's perspective, we have to make things easy for everyone to find and understand. And from a regulatory perspective, we need to make sure that data governance is put in front of those users so that they can be sure that they're complying with the rules and regulations wherever they're actually interacting with that data.
You know, there's a nice analogy to be made in the internet, because I was just thinking, I suppose if this ever were to change, it would have to do with the data literacy of the people at large. And if we make a comparison with the World Wide Web, we have management tools in every person's laptop. You know, you have the certs for visiting HTTPS pages, webs of trust, decentralized stuff. That wasn't all there to begin with.
No.
And as people become more literate, now they know maybe that they want to make sure when they're going to the bank that it says HTTPS, and so they're a little bit more savvy about it.
It changes the behavior of the way that people think about it.
Yeah.
And it only takes a little bit of a nudge to actually get people on that journey towards better data literacy, right?
Right. Okay. So we're still on that journey here.
We are still on the journey, right? And so in order to achieve those two things, we've got to optimize where the data actually sits. So there is, fortunately, software that enables this flipping. And in order for that software to be successful, it needs to connect to everything. So that deals with the sprawl of tooling that we have within organizations. It needs to be adopted by everyone. So it's got to be user-friendly. It's got to be intuitive. It's got to be actually at the point of consumption, not necessarily in some distinct silo, right? Because it needs to become, it just needs to become a part of the way that
hand.
Absolutely. And it needs to, by doing those two things, it needs to then insulate consumers from shifting architectures, right? And if we rename this, data-driven decisions becomes data culture. Being able to access data and find data becomes self-service analytics. Data governance is that compliance piece. Cloud transformation is the optimization of those workloads. And then underneath the software that enables it, the Alation data intelligence platform, right?
All right.
So we've been around for since 2015, and we have a ton of customers that we're really proud of, 500 plus now. And the interesting thing is that people come at this from the perspective of different priorities. So some really were interested in self-service analytics, and actually you'll see most of our customers down here because that's where we really started. Some will be coming at this from the view of, hey, we want to better govern our data and put that governance in front of our data consumers. Some come at this from the point of view of, well, we're going through a big migration from Teradata to Snowflake. How do we prioritize? How do we communicate the changes as we're doing that migration? And we're seeing a new sort of raft of organizations that are really looking at putting the right data in front of the right people at the right time, which is what we're calling data ops. So we're actually seeing customers coming at it from that perspective now. Like last year, you asked me why people actually choose Alation. So I thought I'd come prepared this year with an actual slide on it. So really we're seeing time to value, adoption, and what we call behavioral intelligence. And this is really guiding users to the right data source to use based on usage patterns. So what data assets are popular, who else is using it, and really making sure that governance is at the forefront of their search and discovery journey. So with all of that done, what does it look like, right? So here we have the data catalog. And from a connect to everything point of view, we have a bunch of different connectors that are going to connect to the data assets wherever they exist, whether it's in BI tools like Power BI or Tableau, all the way through to your data lakes, data warehouses, Snowflake, Databricks. They're both close partners of ours. But for most people, we live in a world of Google, we live in a world of Amazon. People intuitively know how to search. So if I want to understand better, well, what information do we have on customers? Right? I can search, and if I'm particularly technical, if I'm a data engineer, for example, I might be interested in the tables or the schemas that customer data exists. If I'm more business focused, I might be interested in terminology or documentation around customers, or potentially BI assets. Right? So let's say we were interested, hey, what do customers actually mean to us? Well, we can then, whoops, my bad. Always helps when you click the right one, right? We can jump into a document that actually tells us how we should think about customers, right? This is well governed. There are workflows in front of it to approve the information that goes in here. But we can call out where are our key analytics, where are our key data sets, what policies apply to the usage of customer information, and I can follow quite quickly then through to actual consumption points where that data exists. We can see that, yes, it contains personally identifiable information. Yes, there is a policy that relates to this. I can see who uses it. But I can also, you mentioned trust earlier when we were talking about, the web and HTTPS, right? We can actually signal that trust in what we call our trust flags. So we can see that, oh, actually, there's a deprecation from an upstream table, and maybe this data actually isn't good to use today. So if I want to dig into that, we can then understand, well, what feeds this analysis, right? Whereabouts do those problems arise from upstream in our data environment? So I can see here, well, there's something that's deprecated, everything upstream looks okay, but everything downstream looks bad. So what's going on, right? There's a table within Snowflake. We can see that it's deprecated, and we can see that actually we failed our DQ test. But there's a JIRA, right? There's a JIRA to resolve that, so we can be relatively confident that that's being worked on. I can use the built-in communication capability to interact with those people that are working on the issue to understand what does it affect. Can I still use my analysis? Do I have to hold off today? And I can then start to collaborate with those people on, hey, what is actually the resolution? What's the impact? We can see the outcome of that data quality through integration with popular DQ tools. But from a sort of usage and literacy perspective, the key here is that we're documenting what this asset is, why it's there, what it's used for, and what part of the business does it belong to.
Who is a typical user of this system, would you say?
So that will completely depend upon the customer we're going into and the use case that they have. So we have customers like Pfizer, and they use us purely from well, not purely, but primarily from a data science point of view, right? So their data scientists are looking for assets that they are creating. They're documenting their projects. They're documenting the ML algorithms that they're using to actually perform their experimentation. And that was actually used in the creation of the coronavirus vaccine, which is kind of cool, right? Mm-hmm. But we have other customers, in the UK, there's a retail chain called Marks and Spencer's, you probably know them, and they came at this from a governance point of view. So this is a business governance, a data governance function that's really focused on business users, business analysts, business decision makers, to ensure that the policies and the correct way of using their data is put in front of them.
Cool. So if users want to find out more and get started with Alation, what is the smartest way to do that?
Well, the smartest way is to visit our booth over at A4.
Right.
But you can request demos on the website. We are actually on Snowflake Partner Connect, so people can sign up for free trials. With the release last year of our new SaaS offering, we make it very, very easy for people to get started and to get engaged with Alation at a low price point.
All right. Are there representatives here in Sweden, or are you guys Nordic representatives?
We
or?
have representatives here in Sweden. We have representatives throughout EMEA, so we are covered.
All right then. Well, you heard it here. Go give Alation a try. I will be seeing you very shortly for the next session. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me again.
And see you guys very soon. Bye-bye.